Why retail for you?
And they were like, why are you here? You could be a mathematician. Can you imagine me sitting at a desk with a bunch of other people sitting at a desk, clacking away on my keys? Retail kind of brings a whole mishmash of misfits together. And for me, that's the most alluring part about it. When I left retail, I worked at a job that was Monday through Friday in the production capacity. So there was very little talking. And I almost died inside. I was like, this is not for me. I need people. That's actually what I missed the most when I left retail, was like that ability to care. This industry, these stores, these businesses, they're not gonna change if everyone who actually cares about people decides to go. We need to stay.
Believe it or not, this is episode 17.
Bro, what?
Over the past 16 episodes, there have been no shortage of discussions around where retail is a challenge. The struggles that you've had in big stores and small, in different categories, different leaders. And we've also talked about the number of people who have left, maybe for good, the industry as a whole. And so my question for you today is, what's driving you right now? What is keeping you in retail? Why retail for you? And that's a big question. So if you want, I can break that down a little bit. And what I would love to do is compare what you talk about with what I think corporate thinks drives motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be the cliche, stupid, like, I'm not going to talk about pizza parties and beanbag chairs and like blah, blah, blah. No, they're smarter than that. They know that pizza is not the key to your retention and motivation. But I still think the things that they're doing aren't quite meeting the moment, even if they're well researched and even if they make sense on paper. So that said, maybe you can start with a story. Maybe you can talk to me about the last time you felt really lit up at work.
Whoa. The last time I felt really lit up at work. So it's happened a lot recently. I think one of my favorite moments that's happened hundreds of times now in my career is actually when you onboard someone and they mesh with the team and you've trained them. And then there's that moment, and it's like a small moment. And this is so cheesy, but I try really hard to like hold on to it and remember what it feels like, where you realize that the person is perfect for your team and that they know what they're doing. Like, and it may be the fact that they are helping a client with something, or they're doing an operational task and they're doing it well. And then one of the coworkers is like, do you need help with that? And they're like, no, I got it this time. And, I'm kind of like standing off, just kind of like in my observational role. And I realize that all the pieces of the puzzle have come together. And I'm like, oh, it was worth it. Like, we did it. We're here. So for me, like a big consistent piece of my career that's brought satisfaction is seeing people grow and learn and helping facilitate that. That really lights me up time and time again.
And I mean, one could say you could do that in any role, right? In any industry as a
True.
leader.
I think there's something about, it's really funny that we're having this conversation because I don't think I've ever really shared this with anyone. He'll be in the forthcoming memoir, I'm sure. But one of the things I like about retail is, to me, it feels so like brimming with possibility, even if it's not sometimes. And what I mean by that is, in the last almost 15 years, yikes, of being a store manager, I have seen many people become store managers themselves. I've seen people leave the industry and become writers for magazines. musicians, doctors, Rhodes scholars. Those are all real things that I've seen. And so to me, being able to work with people who like that inspires me to be inspired by employees who, especially like young people. Like I notoriously love hiring younger people. I like having a swath. I like learning from people in general. You know, I once had a team that was all in their 60s and 70s, and I learned a whole lot about life I could have never learned if it wasn't for that time period. And then I also love having 17-year-olds and 21-year-olds who are like still full of hope and dreams. And I'm like, oh, yay, I need some of that. Let me steal some of that energy. Um, so for me, part of what makes retail different is it's more diverse in age, in background, in upbringing than most other industries are. You know, if you walk by in Boston, State Street Bank, a very tall building, that's a financial services building, you will see a bunch of white men in blue suits, brown shoes, brown belts, and in the winter, a North Face. They look the same. They look like they came from the same factory. And so there's a lot of industries that are not as diverse, not just racially, but just in background and experience. And I think retail kind of brings a whole mishmash of misfits together. And that's, for me, that's the most alluring part about it.
The variety,
Hmm.
the variety of people, the variety of tasks, the variety of customer, the variety of day.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in some ways that's like, it's almost like addictive a little bit. I mean, I think when I met you, when I left and was like, I never shall return, those days, I think one of the things that really like plagued my mind is like, there's not a lot of industries that can you imagine me sitting at a desk with a bunch of other people sitting at a desk and like clacking away on my keys? Like, first of all, I would get nothing done. Everyone who knows me knows that that is true. And not only am I getting nothing done, everyone around me, you're not getting anything done either. Um, because we're gonna talk. So retail is filled with things to do, things to say, people to talk to. There's a lot happening. It's very invigorating for the brain and the mind, I think. There's a lot of problems to solve constantly. I don't think that there's not another industry I can think of that has that mix. It's why, speaking of those 60 and 70-year-old women I worked with, this is going to sound like a weird humble brag, but I'll try to phrase it so it doesn't sound like that. But there were a couple of them who knew that I liked math and knew that I at one point in life like was going to school for different things, and they were like, well, why are you here? You could be a mathematician, you could be whatever. And I was like, trust me, I thought about it, but then actually do that mental exercise of Matt at a desk with a math problem.
Uh-huh.
It's not it's not collaborative enough for me. Like, I want my mind to really be stretched, but I also want to collaborate. I want many people to be involved in the problem, and I want to talk. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. I want to talk. It's really the driving force. Like, if I can't talk, and I know that about myself because when I left retail, I worked at a job that was Monday through Friday in the production capacity. So there was very little talking. And I almost died inside. I was like, this is not for me. Like, I need people. I started like missing clients. I was like, you know what? If someone could just yell at me about a return right now, that would be swell. Um, Not actually, but I did miss the variety of the day. You never know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I think at a really, really cheesy level, and I thought a lot about this when you posed this episode topic. And I was like, how am I going to say this that sounds sincere and not like I've been infected by like a corporate bug and now I'm just like regurgitating things that I've heard. But this is something I actually said to a friend of mine who was also an employee of mine. because he was asking me actually about, well, don't you ever want to like do something else? Like, aren't there other like goals, dreams? And I do have them, just so we're clear. Um, but one of the things I said to him was, I, in the last 15 years, have been able to impact many, many, many people's lives in hopefully a positive way. And to me, even though I can't see that anywhere, like I can, because I can, see where people make it and, where they go. And I know I was part of that journey. But even though I don't get a plaque for that, and no one's ever going to really know all of the things I had a hand in, like I know, and that's sort of enough. And I think in retail, there's an ability to affect people's days, both customers and employees, in a way that's impactful. And there are many jobs I've walked into the store and it's been like really toxic. And like they've had a lot of manager change, or like there's team strife. And I walk in and hopefully make it better. I think that I have in most scenarios. And then when I go, to me, I'm like, oh, I addressed that. I kind of like triaged the situation, got everything where it needed to be. And like that was my impact. And then in general, and I want to share the story because it was going to be a LinkedIn post. And then you said that we were going to do this episode. And I was like, ooh, I can just say it, which is a week ago yesterday, I was coming back. I can't even believe I'm going to get like emotional about telling this story, but it really illustrates to me what we've talked about purpose. Because I think one of the things we've talked a lot about is like purpose and what does that mean and what can companies do. But my whole one employee for Amtrak, of all places, really shifted my entire thinking around purpose in the span of less than an hour. So I was at Moynihan Train Hall in New York. Me and my friend went to go like sit in the lounge while we wait for our train. And there's this very exuberant man. So exuberant, at first I thought maybe he was a homeless man who was just shouting, because he was very loud. And then I was like hearing what he was actually saying. And I was like, oh, okay, he works for Amtrak. And I saw him as people were entering the lounge. And if for anyone who knows, you've never met an exuberant Amtrak employee. They sit there, they they'll make sure you have a ticket before you get in the lounge. They'd rather be anywhere on earth but checking your ticket to see if you should be in the lounge. And again, Amtrak, like being sitting there and checking people's tickets doesn't sound like an exciting job. Like, what could Amtrak really do to imbue a sense of purpose in these employees? I don't know if they could, but this man was like, oh no, my life and my job has purpose, and I'm going to see to it. I wish I knew his name, because the way I don't even know. I want to give the man a hug. So we walk into the lounge and he's shouting, go find a seat. We've got plenty of seats. Where are you going? Oh, you're going to, I love that place. That's a great place. Blah, blah. Oh, I've never been there. Find a seat. And, if you can't find a seat, hopefully someone will make a seat. And then he said, if you can't find someone kind, be that someone. And he kept shouting that. That was like his like mantra for the day.
Wow.
And then, younger people would walk into the lounge like on their phone. And he was like, not in like an old curmudgeon way, and like actually just a very excited for life way. He was like, life is happening all around you girls. Like, cause there were like a couple of teenage girls. Put your phones down. Like, life is happening here. It's not on the phone. That boy's not going to text you back anyway. Put it in your pocket. And so he was just like joking with people. And at one point, when our train went to go like get announced for the track, we're all standing in what is normally like a very miserable experience, right? There's like hundreds of us lined up to like, shuffle away like little Sims onto our train. And people are, and I mean, at one point I'm looking around and all I'm seeing is smiles. I don't think I've ever seen so many smiles in a train station in my life. Most people are like, oh, God, travel, because travel is terrible. So we're all standing there and we're laughing because this man is joking and smiling. And at one point, those same group of girls are going down the escalator to the track. I'm way behind them. He's standing at the top of the escalator, looking down, waving to people. Have a safe trip, whatever. They're all on their phones again. They see him and they put their phones like at their waist level and smile. And he literally shouts to them, I'm proud of you girls. And so we're all laughing, like all of us strangers. I literally got onto the train and was like, wow, that man, that man took it upon himself and said, no, I'm going to take this job that to most people is like mundane and whatever. And he used his whole spirit to really make people's days. And I kept thinking, how many people in that line were having a terrible day for whatever reason? They missed their original train. They're going somewhere they don't want to go, family they don't want to see, a job they hate, whatever it is. How many people, or maybe they're with their travel companions and they're ending their vacation because it's Sunday and now they're like annoyed because they're like, oh, I'm still with these people. Um, how many people entered that train station with that experience? And that man really quite literally did what every company wants its employees to do with customer service. But he just did it because I think that that's the type of person he is. But also that man can like rest assured when he goes to bed at night, like my job has purpose. And it's not because Amtrak told him your purpose is to make people's day. It's because he chose himself. I will make sure it has purpose. And I'm still thinking about that. I mean, it's only been 8 days, but there's not been a day since that day where I haven't been like, I don't even know what to do with that man. That's just shifted something in me in a very profound way when it comes to my own, like, what is, because it's a conversation we have a lot. So obviously it's something I think about a lot. And I think there are definitely moments earlier this year where I unfortunately had to, replace a team. And there was a lot of days working alone. And I had some moments similar to that man where I was like, okay, all I can do is make clients have a great day. That's the only thing I can control. And it did improve my day today a lot.
Mhm.
But I've gone off topic a little bit, but that really like hit me. And I think it really is something that has come up time and time and again that's kept me in retail as well, though, is those moments where you've impacted someone's day, whether it be a customer or an employee. And I'm going on a long-winded thing here, but I'm going to transition into another story real quick, which is there was a moment I posted about it on LinkedIn a while ago. It was when I was at Starbucks. I had an employee who had a panic attack. And I may have told this on an episode before, I'm not sure, but I took him off the floor while we were busy and we did some breathing exercises. We laughed at the ridiculousness of breathing exercises when you're having a panic attack.
Yeah.
Um, and I distracted him with my ridiculousness, as I often do when employees are struggling with something personal. It's not an effort to make it about me or to make light of what they're going through, but to like just sort of I'm ridiculous in so many ways. Use my ridiculousness to sort of distract and keep things, light if that's what the moment requires. And anyway, I remember the employees, we got back on the floor and one of the employees was like, oh, thanks for like taking care of so and so, that means a lot to us having witnessed it. And they were like, there were a few clients who were annoyed. And I was like, the customers are going to forget this one day where their coffee wasn't made fast enough. But hopefully he remembers what it feels like to be cared about more than producing coffee. And so for me, like overall, that's actually what I missed the most when I left retail was like that ability to care, really.
And obviously, where you went, you were allowed to care,
Yeah.
but you weren't allowed to express it.
Well, I wasn't allowed to express it. And I think when you're not in a leadership role, you're
Mm.
actually, and this is something that taught me in a way, which is when you're not in a leadership role, your ability to care and empathize with your peers is directly proportional to how much care and empathy is allowed and expressed by your boss. And I say that because if your boss doesn't really care about people and you want to care about people, it often means the work will struggle in the short term. Right? Like you're not, because while you're caring about a person, while you're stopping to listen, or just be there or give a hug or whatever, you're not producing for the machine. And if your boss doesn't care, that behavior could get you in trouble, or it could be seen as like you're just letting personal stuff get in the way. And so I think as a leader, you have the ability to show people that that actually really does matter. And if they ever need to like stop to care, that that's like allowed, like you get to facilitate that um, in a way that you just can't if you're not in a leadership role.
Hmm. How about when you've had leaders who maybe aren't bestowing that care upon you?
I don't care. I say, I, I'm not saying that like personally, I do care. Like I want my leader to care about me and to facilitate that. But I think as a store leader, my boss isn't in my store every day. So I get to make that call without them. I get to decide that I get to care whether they like it or not. I mean, which reminds me, when I first became a store manager, I had a series of bad managers. And I had some good ones too, but I had a lot of bad ones, but I also had a lot of friends who were also hourly employees who like would tell me horror stories. And I was like, it just leadership can't be this hard. Is really at, as my at my young like 23-year-old age, I was like, let me show these people how it's done. Um Sometimes you just need to be a little delusional. I think delusion is important in the best way.
Mhm.
So when I became a store manager at 24, I was like, okay, I'm going to prove to myself first and then hopefully to others that like I can care and we can make money and like it's not all that difficult. What I've proven to myself anyway, maybe not to anyone else on the planet, but you can care, you can get results. It's actually probably more difficult than I ever gave it credit for, but I that first job I was in, I had a new leader. So the person that hired me ended up going to a different company. I got a new district manager. He actually was like angry, or I don't even know if anger wasn't, I don't know like what sort of like lack of hugs he didn't get as a child that made him behave like this. But my team would often hug each other when they got on shift or change shifts. Like not every single person, but like there was just a lot of like genuine affection on my team, not inappropriate, just genuine care. And clearly he had never seen that in his life because it's lacking for him. And I hope that he gets the therapy he needs. Um, Probably not. But I remember him expressing to me that he didn't basically that it like made he was like, your team is too close. And I remember being like, okay. But so for me, it's like I just ignored his comment because I was like, the results you're getting, the bonus that you get because I have bonused, because at one point we had 5 stores in our district and we actually could see that like basically the collective P&L, which was amazing. I wish more companies like allowed access to it. So I could see that he was bonusing because I was making so much money. I was making up for the 2 stores in the district who were like negative comping.
Mhm.
And it made me angry that he couldn't see that I'm like, those hugs are giving you your bonus. So it's like, I never said that to him, but in my head I did because it's like, that's how you get your money, buddy. Like that hug you're seeing made whatever you're buying with that possible. And so for me, it doesn't, I want my boss to care. I think I probably would stick around in a job longer if I felt genuinely cared for, because obviously I can only provide that for so long before I run out.
Right.
Um, but it's never stopped me from being me. I don't have that ability, unfortunately. Sometimes I wish I did, but I don't.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is a lot of intrinsic factors, like the impact, right? You care about having an impact on individuals and people at large. You care about connection. You care that other people know they feel cared for. That's not something necessarily corporate or a company can give you.
No, they can help facilitate it though. They can allow it.
Perfect segue. Let's talk about that. Boom. Well, and like you said about the man on the train, he chose that day,
Hmm.
right? And it sounds like given the right environment, you would choose that every day. You come motivated.
Hmm.
How do we make sure that companies can sustain that motivation and especially not erode and deplete it?
I think it comes down to, and I think this is one of the things that's kind of like infuriated me about how district managers lead store managers.
Hmm.
Not to say that it's easier, not saying that at all, but you have oftentimes, let's say in a bigger company, you have, say, 5 to 10 of us, but I have 25 people. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think it's really important that people figure out what their team is motivated by. Is it intrinsic? Is it money? What is it? And then exploiting that. If, and I've had a few leaders dabble in this slightly with me, but because here's the thing, you said I come with motivation, and that's true.
Mhm.
Most leaders and most companies I've worked for have only eroded that motivation and not exploited it. And trust me, there's a way to exploit it. And I've even tried to, in some places, like straight up tell you how to exploit it. I'm like, let me give you the roadmap to my psyche. Um, and luckily, I've had some leaders like really understand that, because for me, and I've told people this, there's no such thing as too much reports. I want all the reports. And if you want to even make me make a report that doesn't exist and let me spend some time in Excel, I'll even do that. That is motivating to me. But also, if you allow me to lead with empathy, like fully with my whole soul, then that will keep me motivated. But I think in a lot of roles, what I've actually been required to do is to spend a lot of excess energy apologizing for who I am as a leader, or justifying it in some way, whether it be they think I'm too compassionate. They're not going to say that word. They're going to be like, well, you struggle to hold people accountable. And the thing is I don't struggle to hold people accountable. What what they're seeing is a struggle to punish people, and I'm going to die on the hill. I'll say it till I'm dead. It will be my last words. Accountability is not punishment. Like, those are going to be my last words before I take my last breath. Because there's so much misunderstanding of how to manage people, as if it's all about punishment when you're not getting the behavior you want.
Hmm.
And it's funny, I had this conversation recently because I've had to defend my leadership style, not just to bosses, but also sometimes to my own employees. Um, my own employees have gotten frustrated at me. I can give you several instances of usually an assistant manager or a key holder, but usually it's an assistant manager who sees someone not performing in a way they think they should and gets mad at me because I'm not yelling, or I'm not like whatever. And I said this recently to someone, so I'm laughing to myself. I said to someone who was making a similar complaint recently, and I said, you're not going to change my mind. Not because I think I am the perfect manager and I do everything right, but because I actually give you the same amount of compassion and grace that I give this other person that you're complaining about. And I want you to really think about what it would mean if I took that away from you, because there is no world in which I'm taking it away from him and not you. I'm not taking away from either of you. We're playing an exercise game here.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, because what our issue right now is not that this employee is not performing the way you think he should. It's that his strengths are different and we are not exploiting them to the best of our ability. That is actually the problem here. This is actually a failure of leadership on both of our parts, not a failure on this employee because we're asking him to do something that he is not good at, will never be good at. That is not how his brain works. And to me, being a leader is all about figuring out how do people's brain work. And to go back to my original statement, that's why district managers kind of bother me, because sometimes guys, sorry, not all the time, not all DMs, hashtag, but like, is because if you only have 7 or 8 of us, you should figure out what motivates 7 or 8 of us. Because I have to figure out what motivates 25. Like in that way, your job is easier. You're responsible for more people overall, more money, bigger business portfolio, etc. But when it comes to because if you motivate the 7 of us, if you exploit that to the best of your ability, I'm using the word exploit because I think it's the best word, but I don't mean it in a negative way, obviously. If you figure that out, you don't even have to worry about the rest. That's the thing. And that's what I've really come to know in retail management. If I figure out what all your strengths are, and I have a good team that has many different strengths, which I try to build.
Yeah.
Everything else kind of falls into place. Mm-hmm. But I've spent a lot of time sort of defending myself because we're so sort of addicted to this notion of, I'm going to call it fairness, or like, equal whatever, in terms of how we manage people. Mm-hmm. And it's just wrong. It doesn't work because it's funny. I see a lot of people like churning through people, or they get a lot of people quitting, or they're firing, or both. And then they're like, but you know what? People just, can't follow these. This is A is A and B is B. And we like, that's not how people work at all. Humans don't function like that. And when I was having this conversation with this person about how we're managing an individual, I'll always use the example of when I had that first job, and I've said this story before, so I'll shortcut it, but we had a holiday sales contest and we won. And that was not because everyone on the team sold the same amount of units of the holiday item we were selling. It's actually because we only had 3 people out of like 18 who were great at it. And it became the rest of our jobs to facilitate and help those 3 people always be available to sell the thing. That's actually the job of a team. And to be cheesy, I'll always use sports analogies, even though I'm not a huge sports fan, because sports is pretty universal. Not everyone loves sports, but everyone like kind of understands how teams work on sports. Yeah. And there's no world in which there's fairness on a team in that same sense. It doesn't work like that. You don't end a soccer game and go, okay, well, we only got, because soccer games are low scoring sport. You don't win 26-2. It's like 4-2. Woo! That's why I don't watch it. I'm not watching it for all that back and forth. Woo, 1 goal, yay! But the team doesn't get off the field and coach goes, okay, 4-0. I've got X amount of players. Okay, you got 1, you got 1, you got 1, you got 1. Okay, we won. But you know what? You 10, you scored nothing. You're getting a write-up. You're getting actually, this is a verbal warning. The next time it's going to be a written coaching, and then a written counseling, and then it's going to be a final. Because that's what performance management is. Um, like that wouldn't work. You'd have 10 people who were like, what the F? I gave the assist. That's how we got that score. Where does that not count? So all of this to say, my very long-winded way of saying that we're not managing people like people. We're trying to like botify it and like Sims, like,
Yeah.
everyone's just a little sim. We're moving them around. Oh, they're bumping into a wall. Turn them around. Um, and so, yeah, I think it really comes down to figuring out what motivates people and then using that to make them amazing.
Yeah. And if we could go back to Matt's psyche roadmap,
Mhm.
because I think for the first time, at least clearly, a couple things are connecting. We started talking a lot about leading with empathy and caring for people and impact. Now I think we moved into more external factors, so actual performance, right? Sales
Mhm.
performance, meeting goals, metrics. I have always known you to be very motivated by things like that.
Mhm.
Um, so it sounds to me like you're really motivated to meet those performance goals, but you need the space to lead your team to those goals in your way.
Yes. It's funny that you say that because this employee that I was chatting with about the
Mm.
performance of another employee, he used to work in a factory. And working in a factory is very different. And, very much like if you don't meet X, you will do Y. And I said to him, what you're describing reminds me of working at Starbucks for me. And the
Mm.
reason I can't work at Starbucks, and the reason it's not for me, and we can all, everyone in the world can have a debate about whether this is my problem or Starbucks, and that's fine. But for me, I can't successfully run a Starbucks store. I cannot. It's not a skill I have. And the reason is because I did, I guess, do it for a while. So it's not
Mhm.
that I was bad. I got all those bonuses. Don't you worry, folks. I will get my money. But I don't want it if I can't lead with empathy. And the way that Starbucks moved towards, payroll cuts and different things, I had this clear fork in the road ahead of me that I was like, I have two choices. I can either lead with empathy and financial performance will probably struggle because what they are now requiring is a little bit more intense leadership, that is more focused on output than an outcome than in the journey of how we get there. Or
Mm.
I can really focus and drill down and get those numbers and get my bonuses, and I can become a leader that I'm not happy with. Those are my two choices. And so I left because I, you know, and I don't say this, I think I've said this to many people before, and I think sometimes people take it as me like thinking I think I'm amazing. But, and sometimes I do, depending on what day you ask me. But there are a lot of leaders who adapt to their environment, right? Like if that's what the environment requires, we're becoming a drill sergeant and we're gonna, because we care about our own, not only our own money, but our own yearly review or whatever motivating factor they have. I like don't have the ability in my body to not care. And what
Mm.
I've learned about myself is if you put me in an environment where care and empathy is like basically not allowed, and yes, those environments in retail exist, um, I become a crazy person. And some of that I'm realizing right now in real time. as you're asking me this question, because if you put me that environment, those are the environments where Matt becomes the leader that people think is a little too unhinged for the workplace, because I become even more outspoken. Um, I'm sending emails I probably shouldn't send. I'm saying things I maybe shouldn't say. I'm not screaming or anything, but it's like a pressure cooker for me that I don't enjoy, because as you're putting that pressure for performance on me, I'm looking around at how it's affecting people, and it's like eating my soul away. Because at the end of it all, and by the end of it all, I literally mean quite literally the end of my time on Earth. And I said this to that employee that we were talking about. And I said, you're so focused on like this one thing, which is, whatever. I get that. People get that way. But I'm like, what happens in the four walls of this building is not all that life is. And companies sometimes treat it like it's a sweater, it's a perfume, it's a pan, it's a coffee. Like, it shouldn't feel this intense. And if you scroll through the Starbucks Reddit page, or or the Kohl's Reddit page, or the Bath and Body Works Reddit page, all Reddit pages, by the way, that I read, I bet a lot of executives or professionally mature folks would be like, oh, well, these are like people who are losers, or they're whatever the case, whatever bad adjective you want to use. And really what I see is no workplace should feel like this. I shouldn't even be tempted to go to a Reddit page based on my job to whine with other people. But the fact that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people do, is alarming. And I think, to go back to your question, your connection is correct, and it's a connection I actually have made a long time ago. I don't know that I say it out loud a lot, which is, I will give you all the financial performance you want. What bonus do you want out of me? What comp do you want? Give me a number. I'll get there. But in order to get there, you need to let me care about my people. That is the agreement that we are making. And the second you ask me to not care about my people because the numbers matters more, I actually can't give you any of the numbers you want. And I'm just going to go. You can find someone else.
And I imagine, maybe you can tell me if this feels true or not, but it feels like there are two sides to that. One, because your values suggest that you should lead with empathy. You're an empathetic, caring person. But then built into that is also autonomy. Leave me alone. Trust me to do this. I'm going to do it just this way.
Yeah. No, I think that that's completely true. I also think the autonomy, and I'm not perfect. I'm learning currently in real time, in my role, how to let go of things that I can't control, that don't matter. And one of the things that I realized is, wow, I've gotten in a lot of like back and forths across my career about visuals, or maybe an operational thing I didn't agree with, or whatever. And I think I've reached a point now where I'm like, the only thing I'm willing to fight for is how I treat my team. Everything else I need to let go, because that's the thing that actually matters. And I'm actually wasting my own energy resources by, sort of being like, well, can't we put the sweater over here? Because I don't know, like, that's like me and my control issues, and I need to let that go. Throw it in the trash. It's not important. But when you're telling me how I need to have a conversation with someone, or what action step I need to take, that's where I'm going to be a yes man in all other categories, so that when it comes to my team, that's when you're going to finally hear me be like, so actually that's, not what we're going to do. And I think I've reached out to leaders before many times in how to handle employee situations, just to bounce things off of them. I almost never like the advice I'm given. I almost never take it. It happened recently with this situation I'm referring to. I did not take the advice I was given because I was like, that actually, because in my head, and this might sound psychotic, but in my head, I was like, so that solves the problem, the advice I got, but it doesn't get my team to care about each other and have compassion for each other. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm really trying to get to, because then this problem never rears its head ever again. And I know that that's like being a therapist in some ways as a store leader, but I think a lot of mediation and a lot of employee like strife that we try to solve is through either like mutual punishment or like being like, well, you don't have to like each other, but you have to respect each other. First of all, I hate that sentence. Throw that in
Right.
the trash. And so I have spent a lot of time and energy in my career getting people to like put themselves in each other's shoes, because the other thing that I've learned is you actually can't lead with empathy if that's not what your team is used to,
Hmm.
or if that's not what your team thinks is possible. And I have had many employees who have thought it's not possible. Um, and then of course, sometimes my ego dives in there a little bit and is like, I will prove you wrong. When I got to Starbucks, there was an employee, I sat them all down, the key holders, there were 5 of them. And I was like, what is the thing you need from me? Like what needs to happen? And I got to one, the doubter of the group. There's always at least one. And he was like, accountability. And I was like, great. I love accountability. You might not like how I define accountability, but I like accountability. And it took him months to really understand that like you didn't have to run around like writing people up to get better performance. And to take it all the way to the most extreme, because I really want people to really think I'm nuts by the end of this episode. If someone told me I had carte blanche to do anything I wanted when it came to managing people, there would probably be no write-ups ever at all. And that probably seems like the most wild, liberal, woke, I don't know, throw all the adjectives you want at me, people in the comment section, but I believe that conversations can get us where we need to go. Just really honest, one-on-one. I mean, I have gotten people to realize a job is not right for them and to quit
Yeah.
without ever having to write them up, and just being really real,
Yeah.
and saying, do you think that this is for you? Like, I want you to succeed because I genuinely do want everyone to succeed. I think that those conversations are only possible when people really do believe that you want the best for them.
Mhm.
But I've I've gotten some people to quit um, without, oh, and here's your first warning, and here's your second warning. And it's not because I'm lazy, because trust me, that conversation takes a lot more out of me than any amount of like me signing a piece of paper and making someone else sign it. And I think that that is the misconception, both that my employee I talked to the other day and employees I've talked to in the past, and even leaders above me have had about me, is that like I'm afraid of writing someone up or punishing them or whatever. And I'm like, you realize that an honest conversation, just a really good sit down, is much harder
Yeah.
than you did X, that is bad, sign here. It's much harder to sit someone, look them in the face and be like, you're not doing great. And I think you know you're not doing great. And so my question is, do you want to do great? And if you do, what do you need? How do we make that happen? Or is this a moment where you realize maybe this isn't the path for you? And what is your path? And then I turn that into a conversation about like, what are you trying to do with your life? How can I help? I want to help. What does that mean? Are you trying to get somewhere else? I know some people. I don't know everybody, but like I know some people. I read books. I know how people get places. What can we do about it? Let's just have a real two people having a conversation. That conversation is hard. It can get emotional. It can get intense. It can lead unknown places. That's so much harder than corrective action. Hate that phrase. We aren't correcting any actions. No actions have been corrected from this piece of paper. And I will die on that hill. No one has gotten a piece of paper. You give me a piece of paper, I'm letting you right now. I'm leaving. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm human.
Right. It comes back to the concept of people first, which has almost just become a dead phrase, right? Everyone is saying it. But if you are write up slips and pips before just asking someone what's going on, you might not be as people first as you thought you were.
And I think that really is the heart of it all.
Yeah.
I don't think we know what people first is. And to round this out into like the point of the episode, because I'm sure there's some folks who are like, this is a wild journey we've been on. I want to say that for me, that's what actually keeps me in retail.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have left retail, good people. I'm biased, obviously, but my husband left retail, never to return. My husband's teams loved him. He cared about them so intensely. You know, when we were both store managers, there were moments where we were like, oh my God, I have an employee going through this and you have an employee going through that. It's like, how can we support them and help them grow? And like, we're not perfect, but in my head, I'm like, oh, like we're positively impacting like people's lives. And like, that sounds so cheesy, but the people who really want to do that, unfortunately, a lot of them have left retail.
Yeah.
And I implore with my whole soul, if leaders are listening to this and they're feeling unmotivated or dejected or like, what is the point? They take away my hours and these customers are getting more unruly. And I've been in this career for 30 years and I'm tired and I just want, a Sunday with my family. It's not to say that I think everyone should like sacrifice themselves on the altar of retail or for billion-dollar corporations, because I don't. I do think you need to find a balance, but I implore them to really think about what is your impact? Where can you go where you could be happier? And where can you keep making that impact? Because this industry, these stores, these businesses, they're not going to change if everyone who actually cares about people decides to go. We need to stay and we need to continue to care about people and we need to continue to get results and show that it's possible to deliver double-digit comps and have a team where the write-up drawer is actually empty. We need to prove that that's possible. And so I think that's why I stay. And it's funny because, again, that same employee I was having the conversation with said to me, he's like, you realize you're not going to change how a whole company operates. And I said, I know I'm not, but I'm going to change how the people in this store get treated every day by staying. And that's enough for me.
And the potential domino effect of both, whether you have 4 employees under you or 100, it, as someone who started this work because I'm very career driven and I was at a place for over 12 years that I was so motivated to grow and help, genuinely motivated to help that company grow. And over the course of that time, I always say it was kind of a slow boiling frog thing. It was just, I got there and I was just like, how did I get to this place where the phone, my work phone ringing made my stomach drop, and an email from a certain person would make my heart race, and I would stay till midnight making sure something I was working on didn't have a typo because I knew what would happen if that were true. The change in my whole person from working at a place like that was night and day. And so, and the flip side is true of a healthy workplace. So it's not just as though, great, my team had great work days. You're making a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like the domino effect. And then those people ideally are going and touching people differently and making different people.
No, I totally believe that.
Mm.
I think, I mean, I hesitate to admit this out loud, but there's someone I worked with um, at a clothing company. I don't want to call him out individually, but who really thought I think he thought I was insane, which is fine. But he had 20 years of working for people who were very intense and led with a lot of fear. And so he kind of led with fear. And I do think that I changed how he saw leadership. And after I left that company, soon after he left retail and asked me for a job recommendation, which I gave him because he was great and he changed a lot. But it was funny because when I asked him why he was leaving and he told me about the new way the company was operating, but also like his new leader, I couldn't help but be like, but that's everything you ever did before and you were fine. I didn't say that. But in my head, I was like, wow, I like ruined it for you. And I don't mean that in like a full of myself way. I just think that what you're saying is true. I think when you work for someone who really cares about you, it's almost impossible to go back because you're like, oh, that's what it can be. That's what's possible. And I think in that way, you're right. Like people do get changed. And then hopefully, if they become leaders, they spread that. And
Yeah.
even if they don't become leaders, the bar is just raised for them. And then they don't tolerate shenanigans. Because the amount of shenanigans, especially in retail, that people tolerate because the bar, and let's be real. I mean, I'm going to call out my store manager peers. The bar isn't just low for billion-dollar companies and DMs, because I think those are the people we love to demonize the most, right? Like
Mm.
big bad corporate and then the DM. Our DM. There's a lot of store leaders that suck. Just frankly suck. They don't have a backbone. They don't care about their team. They only care about their career or their bonus or whatever. And I will never forget the experience of being at Old Navy, and I'm going to call it out because I'm not calling out Old Navy. I'm calling out my peers there. Revenge, the podcast. No. Um, where I had amazing results and I had an amazing team. And it was almost like my peers, like, I got along with them for the most part, but there were quite a few of them that were like almost mad that I had great results and that I was nice to my team. Like they were like, there were moments when we were in meetings where they almost like would make excuses for my performance as if it was either accidental or like, well, I just don't have to be as tough on my team because you're doing so well. And I was like, that's not, you're playing a chicken and the egg game. And it's not that. It's actually, we're doing well because they're cared for. It's not,
Yeah.
they kind of looked at it like, well, you can be nice because look at how well you're performing. Like at my store, we have to beat people to get performance. And so it must be nice to love your team and bake cakes for them and like, be in the corner, like talking about, a movie you all saw, but we have work to do over here because we're not doing well. And I'm like, yeah, you're getting it all twisted. And it's something I've experienced in every store environment I have ever gone on because there's at least one employee. I had an employee in my first job, my first store manager job, the job that really laid the foundation for my whole career. I had an employee, Michael, there who one time I did something. I can't even remember what it was. It was the first time an employee made me cry, actually, not at work. But I went home and I was so upset because he said something like, well, if I was the store manager, I wouldn't let them get away with that. And I remember being like I had this moment of doubt, and I don't know where I get it from. So if someone asks me, I have no idea. Again, delusion. But I had that moment of doubt, and then soon after I was like, no, this is like, I'm doing the right thing. Like, I just have to keep doing this, and it's going to get me where we need to go. And I need to ignore this like doubter over here. And I've had that person like kind of throughout my career. There's always been one in every store who's like, you know, sometimes you do have to be like more ma. And there's always someone willing to tell me, and it's where my favorite phrase I've ever said out loud came from more recently, and I put it on LinkedIn, which is, you can't take advantage of my kindness. You can't.
Right.
Because I'm giving it away for free.
Yeah.
It's not a barter system. I'm not giving it to you expecting something in return. I'm not holding on to it. I'm not like, okay, you get 10 points of kindness, you get 10 points, and I better get 10 points of something back. But there's always an employee willing to tell me that someone's taking advantage of my kindness. And I'm like, you're assuming that I'm counting my kindness, and I'm not. You're counting it because that's like your own trauma. Again, see a therapist, figure that out. But don't put that on me. But yeah, we need more people in retail who stay and show that it's possible. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. This was a very interesting discussion.
Have fun editing, Becky.
And then I think the last thing I want to say is I'm not a please hit subscribe kind of person. I'm not chasing subscribers or vanity metrics, but I would really like these ideas to spread and infiltrate other companies. So if you were listening, whether you're a store employee or a store manager or a DM or a VP or a customer, and you think someone else might like to hear it, we would very much love for you to share. If you like the things that Matt is talking about, sharing does definitely help.
Yes.
I think that does it. Thanks as always, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.